Greetings everyone. Today is our day 6 of PMP6 exam prep step by step. Starting today, we are stepping into the real area, the process areas, and we'll go knowledge area by knowledge area, as you'll see. We'll go through all the processes that is there in the PMBOK guide. Of course, as we go through these processes, we will put more emphasis on some which are more important processes and probably a little less importance on some other processes that is not so important in that sense, relatively speaking. So let's get started. As I said, this is the chapter 4 in the PMBOK guide, which is the project integration management. If you're not able to hear me, just send me a chat and I'll have a look at what the problem is. So project integration management, the best way to look at it is through our process management table. Now, if we look at it closely, and we have seen this table before, we saw there are 10 knowledge areas. And we'll go through each of these knowledge areas, processes in the knowledge area, each of the knowledge area. What we are looking at today is the project integration management. And if you look at it a little closely, you will find that there are 7 processes in the integration management. And you'll also realize something if you have not already, and if you look at closely, that this is one knowledge area where it has processes in all the process groups. There is a process in the initiating process group, in the planning, in the executing, in the monitoring, in the closing. Essentially, integration runs from beginning to end. And in a sense, that makes sense. Again, I would like to take note of that word integration. We'll talk about it a little more here, because this is where everything comes together. And when we say everything comes together, all the activities, all the processes in all the other knowledge area comes together to drive the project. And so as we are driving the project and driving from initiating to closing, there will be a process in each of the groups at every stage in the project. Now, integration management, as we have already alluded, is about defining, combining, unifying, and coordinating various processes within the process group. So in each of the process group, if you have seen, there are many different processes in each of the knowledge areas. And when we say knowledge areas, this is a skill set request to do the process. And in the integration, we bring them together to take our project forward. So what are the individual processes? One that we'll talk about is the develop project charter. This is one of the first processes we'll look at. And with this process, we actually formally authorize the project. The project gets formally authorized. And even the project manager. So at that point of time, project manager, when project charter is authorized, that's when the project manager gets the authority to start moving things, start getting resources, go and talk to different stakeholders and so on. And everyone knows now in the organization that he or she is the project manager who is running this project, and all the stakeholders should come forward to help the project manager in whatever way required. And then we go and look at develop project management plan. Now, when we talk about plan, again, I might have already mentioned this before. When we talk about plan in the project management sense, it is not just about the Microsoft project. It's just not just about the schedule. There are a lot of different kinds of plan that we'll see, like quality, stakeholder, communication, risk, all the different plans we'll develop in each of the knowledge areas. And here, in the integration and management, the process that we say develop project management plan, we actually integrate or bring together all those subsidiary plans and make it a comprehensive plan. So as we move forward, we have this project plan to take us forward, where we refer to and we take us forward through the project. Then we have what is called direct and manage work. As we step into execution, this is where we are going to start executing, start building things, start doing the construction. And it is where we are going to direct and manage the work, direct the work and make it happen. And when we do that, again, we'll bring together many of the activities in other process areas in the same process group, like leading the team, managing the team, and so on and so forth. Then we'll look at manage project knowledge. Now, this is a new process that has been included in the 6th edition, and it is now recognized that managing project knowledge has to be provided explicit attention. And so in this process, what we do is we use existing knowledge to the benefit of the project and create new knowledge. Whatever new knowledge we gather during the process, we store, we archive for the benefit of future projects. Then we have what is called monitor and control project work. It is when we come across monitoring and controlling, and again it's monitoring and controlling a process group, it is about tracking that we are doing according to the plan and see that if there is a deviation, what we can do or what needs to be done, what are the deviations. Now, so from this perspective, what you'll find is a project manager will have to wear two hats when the execution is going on. One is the execution hat, where you are directing and managing project work, and at the same time, you are wearing a monitoring and controlling project work, in the sense that whatever is being executed, you keep on tracking, seeing if is it according to the plan. And so this is where the monitored and controlled project work comes in. Now then, we also look at this process, which is perform integrated change control. Now this is about managing and communicating changes. Now this happens to be one very, very important process in the whole project management. Because what really happens is when we are running the project, changes are inevitable. Even if you do a predictive life cycle, changes will be there. You cannot avoid changes. But it is important when there are changes that it is done in a controlled fashion. And we'll again look at it in more details. But if you are not doing it in a controlled fashion, what can really happen is all the different components can very quickly go out of sync, and there will be utter chaos in the project. And then finally, we'll have what is called close project or phase or contract. So it is here that we finally formally close and tie up all the documents that is required in closing the project or the phase, and also this will include the contract. If you have to close some contracts with some of the vendors. So this is an overall picture about what are the different processes that comes together in the integration management. So let's look at an overview. Now, when we are doing an integration management and we are putting together all the processes and driving our project forward, there will be many choices to make. And it will be about different choices that we will come across, we'll have to make as we are doing the integration management. So, which is the right way? Yeah. What kind of choices? Resource allocation. We have to see where we should put the resource, and what kind of resource we should put where and all that. So we have to make choices in terms of resource allocation. We have to balance competing demands. Maybe we are seeing that one area we have a limited resource, and that particular resource is probably required in one area and another area, and so we have to see where we have to put it. Or in terms of finance, or for example, we want to there is a need to increase the scope, but we don't have the money, and so where we cut down, what kind of what way we will be balancing this scenario. So this is a choice as a project manager we will definitely have to make. Examining alternatives in different areas of the project, different phases. As we move through the project, we have to constantly look at different alternatives. Maybe you are getting a vendor or supplier in your project. You have to look at what are the different suppliers. You look at different alternatives, and you'll find each of them will have their own pros and cons. And you have to see which is the alternative that works best for you. The tailoring processes. So what will happen is, you will have, as you have seen here, you will have many processes. In fact, 49 processes. And then in the organization that will be working, there will be many guidelines. So as a project manager, you have to take in and see how you can tailor all these to the need of your project. All projects are generally different from each other. And you cannot just take everything the way it is and use them. You have to tailor it to your requirements. For example, if you are running a large project, many of the process has to be you have to go into many of this process in much detail, as opposed to if you are running in a small project, you will probably not go into that much detail. Or for example, if you are actually doing procurement, then you need the procurement processes in place to do the procurement. Or if another procurement department is doing the procurement, then you don't have to really worry about those processes, because another group is handling that and it is not within your purview. So you have to tailor all these processes based on your project and within the context of your organization, of course. And then finally, there will be many interdependencies, and that is something that you will have to manage as you run the project. Now, we talked about tailoring considerations. Let's look at it a little more. What are the different tailoring considerations that we need to look at? For example, project life cycle. What kind of project life cycle we want to have. Remember, when we said project life cycle, talked about project life cycle. Project life cycle is a sequence of phases. So what kind of phases you want to put together and make a project in your project life cycle. So this is, again, it will vary from project to project. Or development life cycle. We talked about life cycle methodology. Should it be predictive? Should it be adaptive? Should it be hybrid? And how we do that? We will probably see what kind of changes are there. Are the requirements fixed? Are the requirements dynamic? And do we need to provide many deliverables? Do you need to provide single deliverable? Remember, we talked about all this in our last session. Well, this is something that you have to take in, tailor to your project. Management approaches. Now, what is the organization and culture? And based on this, and how complex is your project? So based on this, you might adopt a management approach in your project. Knowledge management. What kind of collaborative environment? So is the environment collaborative? Can we bring together and manage the project, share all the knowledge, and so on and so forth? Change management. How will we manage changes? Like we said, change is inevitable and it has to be done in a controlled fashion. So what are the processes involved in the change management? How we ensure that we are doing the change management in the right way, and what are the baselines, what are the documents that we need to, or what are the components we need to manage in the change management. One, in terms of governance, who are involved? What is the board that is involved in our project? What are the committees we need to continuously keep engaged, and what kind of status reporting we should put in. Lessons learned. Lessons learned, again, what are the lessons that is there in our knowledge database or in the organizational process assets that will be helpful to our projects, and how can we contribute to that lessons learned database for future projects. So, and what are the things? And benefits reporting. How will we benefit the report benefits out of this project, and when we should be doing the reporting? So these are some tailoring considerations that we need to take into account when we are actually doing the project, or when we are doing the integration. Now, with that view or that perspective of what we are doing in the integration project management, let's step into our first process. And the first process is develop project charter. Now, develop project charter, as we have seen before, the purpose of this process is to formally authorize the existence of project. So once we put this together and we approve it, our project comes into existence, and with it, the project manager has the authority to get resources, to communicate with different stakeholders, and so on and so forth, and put together a team as well. Now, project charter will also put in a well-defined project start date, saying that this is when the project starts, and also boundaries in terms of what is the scope of the project. That is also, that will come within the project charter. It becomes a formal record. Formal record to take your project forward, and you will come and access this, reference this project charter oftentimes as you go through the project. This project charter also means that you have gained senior management commitment, because a project charter, when a project charter is approved, this typically senior management is in concurrence. And essentially, when you gain senior management commitment, you can now go and access resources, financial resources or whatever resources that is required for the project. And in the process, as you are developing the project charter, or as the project charter gets developed, a partnership starts forming between performing or your team and the business who is requesting the project. And that partnership is very important because that partnership will take you forward. And this is an opportunity that you develop this partnership so that when you run the project, you can work together closely for the success of the project. So project charter in effect starts the whole thing. Now, this project charter, if we look at it from a process perspective, and we said a process has an input, some activities inside the process, and an output. Now, what are the inputs that we'll have in the project charter that comes into the project charter? Is the business documents we talked about. You remember that we said business case and business benefit plan in the business documents. Those are the inputs that gets into the project charter process, this particular process. In agreements, there might be some agreements and contracts that is there, and different enterprise environmental factors or organization process assets. Those are things that will come in this particular process developed project charter. And the kind of tools that we use inside this process are like expert judgment. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about data gathering, interpersonal skills, and of course, meetings. And then once we have that, we get two documents. One is a project charter that really authorizes the project, that authorizes the project manager, and assumptions log. Basically, what are the assumptions based on which we have embarked on this project? And we say assumption log because this assumption log, as you move forward, you will be updating in many of the processes. So when you start a project, when you are getting into the project, there is a very critical question that will come about. And not you, many in the organization will be asking this question. And that question is it worth it? Now, this project, any project for that matter, we don't want to spend any money unless we know for sure it is giving us the value that outweighs whatever we spend in terms of money and effort. So that is the first question that will come about as we are developing a project charter. And how we address this? The two factors or two elements that will come in answering this question, is it worth it? One is business case. What is the business case? From the business standpoint, what it is giving and how it is getting triggered. And the second is the cost benefit analysis. How does it look in terms of the finance? So let's look at each of them a little more closely. Business case. Now, when we say business case, what is going to happen is, and we said that business case document will come about. So what is going to happen is the sponsor, who is the beneficiary of the project, they will have to justify why they need this project and what they are getting from this project. And one of the key things that comes about in justifying this is, what is the benefit and what, or basically what is triggering this initiative. So there are several reasons for which a project might start or start taking shape or a project might get initiated. One is market demand. Now, market demand can initiate a project, can trigger a project. For example, in the car industry, let's say it's a car manufacturing company, and they now realize that electric car, everyone is going in for the electric car, and the market is looking for electric car. So that particular company might have to create or will create a project to develop electric car. Now, another reason might be there might be some organizational need because of which a project needs to be started. Now, for example, they realize that there is a possibility of improving the process in the organization. Now, when improving the process, they might start a process engineering project in the company. So it is a project coming out of some internal organizational need. Or it might come about from a customer request. As an example, let's say a company is in the business of building hotels, constructing hotels, and a request has come from the customer to build another hotel someplace. So that project has come about from customer request, has been triggered by customer request. Or there might be some technological advance that required a project. For example, in your company, you have been having all the infrastructure, IT infrastructure inside your premise, and that has been fine. Now, with all the technological advance, especially in the cloud technology, a project might come about that this project is about moving all our infrastructure into the cloud. So when you want to do that, that might create a project. Or ecological impact. As an example, let's say a chemical factory wants to reduce the emission, to reduce the ecological impact, and then they might have to create a project. Or it might be because of legal requirement. For example, your company might be required to put in more legal reports, add more reports to the government to satisfy some legal requirement, then it might trigger a project. Or social need. Social need is when a company recognizes that they might want to do some social work. That's when they might start a project. For example, here they might want to start a school somewhere for the benefit of the community around the company, and that might create a project. So these are some different triggers that might start a project, that might justify the business case and initiate the project. Now, the next question is about finance. What does it look like from the finance standpoint? And that's when we do cost-benefit analysis. And let's go through some of the cost-benefit analysis procedures to understand what kind of cost-benefit analysis that we do. Cost-benefit analysis, when we do, all starts with understanding the future value. Basically, if I have 100,000 today, what does it mean after 5 years hence? Or for example, if I have 200,000 after 5 years, what does it mean to have? What does it mean today in terms of present value? So there will be net present value, internal rate of return. These are some concepts that we'll take up to understand how we go about the cost-benefit analysis. I understand some of you might have already done that or will know this, but it will be a good refresher, as well as it'll tie things together when we start discussing. Now, future value of money is about if I have some $100,000 today, what will it be after so many years? So what is the future value of this 100,000? And the way we calculate is future value is equal to present value times 1 plus I by to the power of n, where f is the future value, PV is the present value, I is the interest rate, and number of periods. So if we take this formula and put some numbers, what we'll see is, let's say the present value is 100,000. So today we have 100,000. And the interest rate is 4%, number of years is 6 years. And then when we plug this number in and use this formula, we will find that our $100,000 today will amount to 126,532 at the end of 6 years when we apply a 4% interest rate. You might want to look at it from perspective that you keep it in the bank, $100,000 today, it will come to this after 6 years at compounding interest rate of 4%. So this is how we calculate the future value. Then the reverse or the converse is the present value of money. Present value is if I have a certain amount of money in future, what does it amount to now? In other words, let's say if someone offers me 100,000, let's say they say that, hey, give me 100,000 and I'll give you after so many years so much amount of money, let's say 120,000. Now, if I want to find out which is a better option, or should I really part with my 100,000, then I have to see that future value that the person is giving me, what does it amount today? That is one way I can compare because I am giving 100,000 today. So the way it is calculated is, again, PV is equal to FB divided by 1 plus I, like before, PV is equal to present value, FB is equal to future value, I is the interest rate, number of periods. And if we plug in numbers and say the future value, someone is offering me 250,000 in the future, and I want to see how much what does it mean today. And if the interest rate we again say 4% number of 6 years, and we make this calculation by plugging this number in this particular formula, what we'll realize is it is 197,579. So at this rate, the future value of 250,000 amounts to 197,579. Now let's start putting them together, these two concepts. Now, what you will realize in the organization when you are incurring expenses or you are generating value, it is not about one number, and it is not about someone giving you, or you are just benefiting, or there is one expense of 100,000, you need to calculate that. There will be a stream of financial transaction that takes place. And that stream of financial transaction we need to put together and calculate not the present value, but the net present value. Because we will be calculating the net present value of these outflows and inflows, and then find out what is the present value. So let's take an example. Okay, first of all, the way we do that is net present value is equal to present value of all cash inflows minus present value of all cash outflows. So we are talking about present value. So if there are multiple cash inflows and outflows that comes today, then when you sum that up with cash inflows minus cash outflows, you get the net present value. And of course, higher the net present value, that is more the inflows, the better it is. Now let's take an example. Let's take an example in terms of a project. We are assuming here that the rate is 4%, like we have done the calculation before. And let's say that we are having a project, we are trying to analyze a project, trying to see does this project makes financial sense. And what we'll be looking at is every year, what is the expense that will incur on this project, or outflow, what will it happen? And then the benefit, when the benefit starts coming in, and we are saying that, it is not that after the project gets over, we will start getting the benefit. We will start getting benefits even after 1 year. And you might take it as a project. For example, we are implementing retail registered application where it will improve the register function in a retail chain. And so once we have done that initial work, every year we go about implementing this system in different chains. As soon as we implement that, we are trying to, or we'll start to get the benefit. So let's say in the first year, we have spent in developing this retail system for this retail chain, and we have spent $100,000. And when we have spent $100,000 1 year, when we apply the formula, we see the present value of the outflow is 96,154. 96,154. And then let's say in the second year, we will be spending 200,000 on this. But at the same time, when we are spending this 200,000 in developing and also some implementation, because we'll be going and implementing in many of the retail stores for this retail chain. And when we have implemented, they have already started getting benefit. And that benefit is 50,000. And we are saying that this is giving me an inflow return as 50,000. So in this particular second year, what we are seeing, there are 200,000 of outflow and 50,000 as inflow. And when we say present value of outflow, basically present value as of today of this 200,000 is 184,911 using the same formula that we applied. And the present value of the inflow, that is of the 50,000, is 46,228. Then we have in the third year, we are saying investment has gone down, expense has gone down, it's 100,000 outflow, 100,000 inflow. And in the third year, when we take that number and we make it into present value, we see the present value outflow is 88,900 and same for present value inflow. Similarly, we make this calculation. Now you see, as the time goes by, there are less of outflow and there are more of inflows. So we start getting, all these, different inflows in year 4 and 5, for which we calculated the present value of inflow. Now, when we sum this up, we find that figures which is the present value of outflow and present value of inflow. And when we do a net present value, which is cash inflows, present value of all cash inflows minus cash present value of all cash outflows, basically 470,474 minus 369 965, which is 100,509. So what, in other words, we are saying, this project we are developing is going to give the company 100,509 in financial value, because the gain that will have, the return that will have from this project will outweigh the expenses that will incur because of this project. So this is a way to do financial analysis in terms of for the project, in terms of what kind of financial benefit that we'll get for a project. Then another way to do this same kind of analysis or financial analysis is by virtue of by applying internal rate of return instead of net present value concept, NPV. Now, when we want to do this internal rate of return, basically it is saying this: internal rate of return is a discounted rate that makes NPV of all cash flows from a particular equal to 0. So in other words, at what internal rate of return will this will all cash inflows or present value of cash inflows equal to present value of cash outflows. And so when we do this, you find that particular discount rate at which present value of all cash inflows is present value of cash outflows. That is the IRR we are talking about. Of course, the higher the IRR, the better it is. So in other words, what we are saying here is, if let's say I get an IRR of 4%, and I go to the management and say, okay, the IRR for this project is 4%, the manager might say, hey, if I invest the same money somewhere else, I'll get a much better return. So this is, they'll compare with what it really means, and they'll compare across projects to see which project is giving more IRR. So that was a small treatise on the how we do the cost benefit analysis for a project. Now, developing the project charter. When we go about developing the project charter, what does it involve? It involves doing the expert judgment, or you will engage expert judgment. Now, because this thing will come again and again, we need to understand one very key thing when we are managing a project. Now, project manager or the project typically is very complex, will involve many different complex activities, and by no means project manager will know everything or even a small amount of all the details. So the project manager will have to take, or the key in project manager is able to access all the resources that is available, and one of them is expert judgment. You have to consult people who are expert in that field and bring that into the project, bring those knowledge into the project. So when you are developing the project charter, you will talk to different people and experts who are into the organization strategy, who understands the benefits management, probably in the business side, who understand the technical knowledge, because as we are doing many assessments, you will have to understand, go deeper into the technical side of things, how the budget is estimated in this organization, or what kind of risk. So you will talk to different experts, and you use that expert resources in developing the project charter. Then there will be data gathering. You will do brainstorming. Brainstorming is the technique to get inputs from different members or different participants in the brainstorming get new ideas so that you can make better judgment. That's then focus group. Focus groups where you get a group together, and that in a focus group the difference is they focus on a particular aspect of the project and they'll flesh out, and as a project manager you will typically facilitate that group to see that the best comes out from that group discussion in the focus group. And then interviews. You will go and interview different stakeholders, get their ideas, get their inputs in developing the project charter. Typically, these interviews are one-on-one, but you can also sometimes interview, more than one at a time. But typically, they are one-on-one. Then, in this process, you'll also resort to some of your skills, interpersonal skills. One is conflict management, because when you're developing the project charter, you might find different groups are coming up with different ideas, and there might be a conflict between different ideas, and you as a project manager, when you get into the discussion, you will have to resolve those kind of conflicts in ideas. And when we talked about focus groups, you will have to facilitate. And again, of course, you'll be doing a lot of meetings, and you have to manage those meetings as you move forward. And then finally, there will be, as we said, meetings. One is, you'll have a lot of meetings with the key stakeholders. And when you are having a meeting with key stakeholders, you will be able to understand their perspective so that you can put them together in the project charter. Output from the project charter that comes about is, one is the project purpose. What is the purpose of the project? What is the measurable objectives and success criteria? So you have to put the objective and success criteria in the project charter. You will have high-level requirements. Remember, at this point, you don't have the detailed requirements. You have a very high-level requirements in discussion with the stakeholders as to what is it that they are looking for. Then there will be high-level project description. So, and there will be boundaries in terms of what is required and what is not required. If you can do include, if they have specified, hey, I said this, but we also have to be clear that we are not looking at this particular things in this project. So they might put a boundary, the scope. And overall project risk, you would try to understand what is the project risk and summary milestone. Again, you don't have a detailed schedule, but at this point, you might get an idea in terms of what are the different milestone or schedule when they are looking at getting this over, or getting the deliverables, what deliverables at what point of time. These are the details that you will take in. Then, if there are any pre-approved financial resources, sometimes a project, when it is embarked, there is already some financial resources that has been approved. So you can include that as well here, because this will help you in your financial planning. Then key stakeholders list, because you will be interacting and engaging stakeholders all through the projects, and the earlier you are able to capture who are the stakeholders, the better it is. And in this project charter, because you'll be interacting with many of the stakeholders, you might as well list down who are the key stakeholders. Project approval requirements. Now, what needs to be approved and who is going to approve? And what is the project exit criteria when the project is done? What are the criteria based on which it will be measured? And who is the assigned project manager and authority? So if you're the project manager, your name will be here, and what kind of authority do you have? do you have the authority to go and purchase stuff, or you have to take some approval from someone? Or maybe you are given the authority that you can go ahead and purchase from up till $20,000 or $100,000, whatever it is. So this authority that we have as a project manager will be explicitly mentioned here, and name an authority of sponsor. Who is the sponsor of the project? Project manager is not the sponsor. Someone other than project manager who has who is typically at a little bit senior in the organization and who has the authority to sponsor the project. So this is also that we'll put together in the project charter, and this project charter really starts the project, the next step of the project. In addition, and when we are drawing this project charter, like we mentioned before, you will put together any assumptions that have come in, like for example, high-level assumption from the business document that we talked about, and maybe low-level assumptions generated, and this is an assumption log, a document that will be a running document as you move through the project. Our next process will be the develop project management plan. Develop project management plan. The first question we need to go about this planning is why plan? Because planning takes a lot of resources, a lot of time. So we better understand why we are going through all this in the planning phase. Because this plan becomes a common platform of understanding. Now, what do I mean by that? This is where, everyone, the stakeholders, the users, sponsors, project team, project manager, PMO, all of us will come to this plan whenever we want to discuss. Whenever there is a disagreement, people will come and say, hey, okay, this is what we planned. Now, where are we? And why has it been deviated? Or why is it? And so, if, for example, you have the plan and somewhere as you're running the project, as user says, well, why didn't you provide this in the functionality? Then you can say that, okay, let's look at the plan. It is not there. We have never planned for it, and that's why we not. Of course, you might say that if you really need, then we can go through the change control process and do it. But then we don't have it at this point because we have not planned for it. So it becomes a common platform of understanding for everyone concerned. For us, it creates a project roadmap. And a project roadmap in the sense that what we'll be doing at what point of time, how much we'll be progressing at what point of time. And that roadmap will show us where we are going, how we are going, and also something that will bring clarity when we are talking to our sponsors, our business. It provides a structure to a framework in terms of processes, in terms of who is doing what, and so on and so forth. And it provides a reference documentation. And this plan, we will come back again to refer because this is going to be very valuable documentation. And finally, baseline. Baseline is something that we'll talk about it more. But then when we say baseline is the project, it is something that has been locked down, and that becomes the reference point. So for example, if someone wants to find out, have we exceeded the budget, it will be the cost baseline they'll refer to, because that is the baseline that we put when we planned it. And baseline, when it has to be changed, it has to go through a formal change control process and approval process before the baseline is changed. Because all the time we will compare the performance of the project with respect to the baseline. Now, develop project management plan. The inputs that come in as project charter, because project charter, start of the project, it has all the details. And in this also we'll have output from other processes. I'll talk about what are those outputs, because we said in integration we put all that we do in other knowledge areas, processes in other knowledge areas together. And so output from those processes will come into the as input to this particular process. And of course, we'll have enterprise environmental factors and organization processes. Tools that we'll use here is expert judgment. We talked about expert judgment, and you'll find this again and again. Data gathering, interpersonal skills, and meetings. And then the output that we'll get is the project management plan. Now, when we say project management plan, we'll see it is not a simple document. It has many things underlying it. Now, integration of plan. So, essentially, in this particular developed project management plan, we are going to integrate all the different plans that will be there in all the knowledge areas. So on the right hand side, if you can see, there are all these different processes or knowledge areas, and there are all these different plans that takes place. And in this particular process, we bring all those plans together. So we are integrating all subsidiaries plan in all the other knowledge areas, and which will provide a central document. And we talked about tailoring before. So what it really means, the way we bring them together, or rather the details that we have, or which processes to be involved, and which subsidiary plan is relevant, and how much of it is relevant, will depend on the application area and the complexity of the project. And this will, again, I said, give a baseline plan. In other words, it will be the truth document. So any change to be approved, any change to this plan will have to be approved through change control process. We'll talk about change control process. It's a formal process, and with all the analysis and required approval. So we cannot just go and change any of the baseline plan. It has to go through a process. Now, one of the things that we need to understand is about balancing constraints. In a project, there will be many constraints that will often play a tug of war. So there are different things that will come in play. Now, when you plan, and if you have spent enough time, spent perfectly, what you'll find is you will do the scope, you will quality, time, resource, cost, and risk. And you put them together. You put them together so that they all match up. For example, you have your cost and time is justified based on the scope and the risk you have considered, the kind of risk that has been included in the cost. You have also taken resources. So it is a very balanced thing. But then what happens is when you go into the project, things can change. The scope might increase, then it is not such a good round shape anymore, because the cost has become, cost is still like that, and the scope has increased, so it's not balanced anymore. So you have to some way balance it, all these 6 constraints that we're talking about here. Of these 6 constraints, these 3, scope, cost, and time, are the most vital, most critical. And they are often called as iron triangle, these 3 constraints, which is scope, cost, and time. And we'll look at this. These are the 3 areas or three factors, three elements that will often judge the performance of your project. Now, in the planning process, like we said, as a project manager, you are not going to do it alone. You will take contribution from many different stakeholders. And let's look at that. Now, some of the stakeholders, what they contribute. For example, your project management staff or this set of stakeholders will contribute in terms of leadership, structure, facilitation, direction, expertise. For customers or functional managers or operations or users, they will tell you what is the scope. They will tell you what is the quality they are looking for. And they might come up with changes, and they'll also provide you expertise from the business side, from the functionality side. And then project management office, a program manager, if you have a project management office, they'll provide you the methodology, direction, guidelines. Those kind of things you can expect from them. When you're talking about project sponsor or the management, they'll provide you all the resources. They'll provide you the budget. They'll approve the plan. And that's when you'll go into the baseline. For example, if in terms of sellers and business partners, they'll be providing you resources. They'll also provide you expertise. And your project team, the more critical, they'll provide you the expertise to run the project. You will also be able to get from them the cost and schedule estimate, because they are on the ground. And the kind of risk that will be there, and the technical and functional knowledge, this is what your project team will be able to provide you in your planning process. The tools and techniques that we'll use is, again, expert judgment. And in terms of expert judgment, you will look at how to tailor. So some of the experts will be able to provide you who have done this similar kind of projects, and then what kind of resource and skill levels you can get from experts, and configuration management, change control, work prioritization. And in terms of data gathering, you again will have, for example, brainstorming. We'll talk about many of these techniques in a later knowledge area, later process. But you will use these different data gathering techniques in your planning process. Then interpersonal skills, again, similarly, as you go into data gathering, as you go into having discussion, meeting, group discussion, brainstorming, you will come across facilitation, meeting management, conflict management. And finally, in meetings, this is where you will have the kickoff meeting. Kickoff meeting is when the project now starts go forward. So after the planning. So you have to remember that sometimes in many organizations, probably kickoff meetings takes during the project charter, after the project charter. But for your exam purpose, PMP exam purpose, you should remember that kickoff meeting takes place in the planning, project planning, develop project plan. The output that you are getting out from this, like we said, if you remember, we said project management plan. Now, there are a lot of things inside this project management plan, and we talked about project management plan is about consolidation, integration of many of the subsidiary plans. So the output here, what we'll have is, one is a subsidiary plan, and let's look at what are the different subsidiary plans. Scope management plan, we'll look at it more, and it will talk about the scope. Requirements management plan, again we'll discuss in the next knowledge area. Then schedule management plan in terms of time, cost management plan, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, stakeholder. So all these subsidiary plans will come about and get integrated into the project management plan. And each of the subsidiary plan will talk about when we get into respective knowledge areas. In addition to these plans, we'll have baselines. Like baselines, we said lockdown documents where, this will be the reference to judging the performance of the project, and any changes to the baseline, we'll have to go through a change control process. So the kind of baseline we'll have: scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline. These are the three key baselines: scope, schedule, cost. Scope in terms of what we are providing in terms of functionality, schedule in terms of how much time we're taking, how much we've committed, or how much we've planned for, and cost is about the budget that we have put and how much you're spending. So these are the baseline. These are the baseline plans based on which we will move through the project, and our project, the performance of our project will be measured. In addition to that, there will be some other additional components as well. For example, change management plan. How we are going to do change, what are the procedures we'll have, configuration and management plan, what are the, how we'll maintain the different or store or maintain the different components and features or documents, and what are the performance measurement baseline, how our project will be measured, what is the project life cycle, in what kind of phases will take it, how we have divided into different phases, what is the development approach in terms of, is it adaptive, is it predictive, and then how often we'll have management reviews, and so on and so forth. So these are some additional components that will come in the project management plan. So with this, we'll finish today, and we'll continue with our next processes tomorrow, which is on Wednesday, July 11th. So we'll still be in the integration management, and we'll continue at the same time with the rest of the processes in integration management. Thank you for being with me. I'll see you tomorrow. I hope it was helpful.